Okay. All right. So again, welcome to session 3 of our attendance session. Let me share my screen so that we can take a look here. So as I mentioned before, we have our Padlet of resources. And so all of what we're going to talk about today is in this session 3 tier 2 strategies link or column on the Padlet. And then also on this Padlet are various Ohio's attendance guide, which has a ton of great activities or great ideas in it. And then in addition, attendance works playbook, and then an attendance work implementation guide. So it kind of gives you some hints on how to implement the strategies that you're looking at. So it asks some important questions about having capacity. I know I heard in room 1, Springfield is working on making sure that they are combining the work so that we don't have so many silos going on because nobody has time to do more and have more meetings. So all of these resources, again, are linked on the Padlet. All right. Go back to our PowerPoint. All right, we can see the PowerPoint again? Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right, so any ideas that came out of those breakout rooms that you're like, yeah, this is a really great idea. We want to give that a try. Can I get 2 people to share?
We have some competitions going on. I think Fostoria was one of them, and Toledo Public per grade. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's been, I guess, pretty successful. But they're still kind of waiting and see what the data shows. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it. One more person. What did you hear that you liked? Or what did you
I,
say that you liked?
I liked Jacob had said that he does some they do interviews with students when they enroll that when they notice that they have histories of chronic truancy and kind of a pattern of behavior with truancy. So they'll interview and meet with them before they enroll, explain, what's going to happen and that, they're serious, they're going to take this very serious. And so he said
Mm-hmm.
that that does help about 50% of the new kids coming in.
Awesome. Awesome. Very proactive. Good job, Jacob. Melissa, was that what you were going to say, or did you have another idea? Same? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. All right. So again, those are the resources are on our Padlet, Ohio's attendance guide. So right now we are looking at tier 2 early interventions. So these interventions, and again, none of this is set in stone, but generally once a student starts missing 10%, which is our threshold for chronic absenteeism, and again, this is excused or unexcused absences. It's not just the unexcused ones. It's any absences, because if a student is missing, that means they're not getting the academic content that is being presented that day, and it can affect their academic performance. So we're looking at 10 to 19% of days being missed for whatever reason. Okay, once we get past the 19%, then we're looking at these tier 3 one-on-one interventions that we'll talk about next time in our December meeting. So remembering, again, we want to make sure that whatever intervention we pick, it's going to have high impact and as low of effort as possible. So we're going to start simple and but with things that are going to give us our biggest bang for our buck. So the competitions by grade level to see who can come, or competition, having something that is universal. If you are here 92% of the time, 93% of the time, not always perfect attendance, because we don't want snotty little kids coming to school when they're all snotty and sick and all that kind of stuff. But Jacob doesn't want any little kids coming to, he likes the big kids, but we don't want any snotty big kids coming to school either. But so we have some flexibility in there, but if you hit a 92% attendance school, then you're invited to have donuts on Friday morning or on Monday morning, whatever our lowest attendance day is, that's the day that we're having donuts or breakfast or whatever it is that you're doing to acknowledge those kiddos that are coming on a regular basis. Okay. So our tier 2 interventions target those students who are at a greater risk to really kind of be chronically truant. So, or they are already missing 10% or more of our days. So we are going to go through lots of tier 2 interventions. All right. I'm going to clip along at a pretty good pace. As always, feel free to unmute and stop me. I currently cannot see the chat. So if someone can keep an eye on the chat for me, if there's something coming up, I've got too many screens open right now. But unmute and ask me questions, but there is more information on each of these on the Padlet. Okay, this is kind of a survey overview of options, and then you have resources to dig in deeper. All right, so these are the ones we're going to talk about today. So let's start with early warning systems. This is used often in high schools, and it's starting to happen in middle schools, where they have determined, they being the researchers, the website that's on the Padlet is actually from the Department of Education in Michigan, there's 3 different characteristics that are kind of red flags for kids that put them in danger of dropping out. Those 3 are attendance, behavior, and course performance. And so the goal is always to catch these kiddos as early as possible. All right, so this is a high school initiative, but a lot of our middle schools are pushing down and starting this a little bit earlier. So attendance, it's having chronic absenteeism. Behavior, suspensions or expulsions. For every suspension or expulsion, or especially expulsion, but even individual suspensions that a kiddo gets, it correlates to a higher chance that they're going to drop out of school. All right. And again, if you're suspending a kiddo multiple times for the same behavior, chances are that's not working, unless that behavior is dangerous, illegal, etc. Okay. And I know that's where we're mostly focused right now. But each time the kiddo is suspended, that reduces the chances statistically that they're going to graduate. And then course performance. For high school, it's any failing course. For middle school, they focus on math and English as the failing courses. If a kiddo is failing math or English, then that flags them as a possible kiddo that's at risk of not graduating. Okay. So there is a new database, and there is a PowerPoint on, I currently do not have access to the database. I need to fix that. But there's a new database. It's the Early Warning System ODEX database. And you have access through it through your OH ID. Okay. And the person who gives you that access is your OEDS administrator in your district. Okay. On the Padlet, I've put a PowerPoint that kind of walks through and describes that database. It is relatively new. It's awesome because it takes things that you already put in EMIS and aggregates the data, and it creates levels of these kiddos are at risk, highly at risk. There's one that's like ultra high risk of not graduating. That doesn't mean you have to decide where you're going to set your cut scores as far as the kiddos that you're going to look at. I know if a student is a ward of the state, they are automatically put as ultra high risk. Okay, because obviously if you're a ward of the state, some stuff has happened, some trauma, so that puts you at risk. Now, that doesn't mean that every student who's a ward of the state is failing classes or chronically absent. I mean, it may be that in their new placement, they're better off than they were where they were before. So all of this is kind of based on, you've got to use the data as a flashlight, not a hammer. Okay. But it at least gives you a starting point, and it aggregates it all for you, which is lovely, lovely, lovely. And again, I'm going to work on getting access to that database so that in the 3rd session or 4th session in December, I can show it to you and show you what it looks like. Right. So we'll plan on that for the next one. I'm making myself a note so I don't forget. All right. So putting into place an early warning system in your school, especially if you are middle school and high school, to be able to say, at what point are we flagging these kids to say, we need to start using some of these interventions to help them be more successful? Another strategy is, involves mentors and tutors, okay? So having a student have, we know that relationships are so very important. So some of these kiddos who are at risk, can we assign them a mentor? If they're academically at risk, can we make sure that they're going to tutoring? Okay. For our younger kiddos, check in and check out is a possibility. That doesn't always work for the high schoolers because they don't want to take that check in and check out sheet to a teacher every hour and feel embarrassed by that. Okay, so Check and Connect is a mentoring program for middle school, high school, and it can't even be used with elementary students who are really having a hard time. If you've been in my PBIS Tier 2 training, this all sounds very familiar because guess what? It all overlaps. It all goes together. Peer mentors are a possibility, having some of your older students mentoring some of your younger students. And then possibly a homework club, because again, the days of go home and ask your mom and dad how to do your homework, that's tough. I mean, again, I was really good at school, but once our kids got to 7th grade math, I'm out. Like phone a friend, something, because I don't know. If I know how to do that, it's not going to be the way that you learned how to do that. And then we're just going to fight about it because that's not what the teacher said. Well, if you remember what the teacher said, go apply that and go do your homework. So we need some other options for kiddos in order to get the help that they need. Okay. If you have been in my Tier 2 training, I'm sorry, you're going to get to see this video again, but it doesn't hurt. So this is Check and Connect and kind of what it's about.
Check and Connect is a program we have in our school. I would call it an intervention.
It's effective
hear it
because
and
we're
see it.
finding out where the needs are
Yeah.
and working with those kids who really need it.
In general, if that's a student that we're looking at and thinking they really just need someone in their life, we automatically go to Check and Connect.
We do it around the data we received from the school administration staff. Their grades, suspensions, time out of class.
When Check and Connect came, I thought this is what kids need, to build relationships with someone who cares about them, knows them, and wants the best for them.
I usually try and find some common ground, some common interest.
First, I'll talk about what's going on in my day, and then we'll try and change it into like put it in perspective of basketball.
I share a little bit about myself and who I am and my goals and my purpose in working in the field that I'm working in.
A lot of it requires me to be vulnerable myself and share with them like, hey, like we're on the same page.
We start by trying to build trust, and that's very hard in any facet of life.
When I first get a student on my caseload, I like to try and call home and just kind of introduce myself, talk about the program. And I think the biggest part about it is focusing on the positives.
The biggest thing is that those students are feeling connected to someone in the building and that they have someone they can go to.
I have one mentee who confidence has been a struggle for him. His teachers had been talking with his mom and meeting with her. She was starting to kind of get on his case, and he actually came to me and he was talking about how no one was focusing on the positives. So then I followed that up, talked to his mom, told her about all the things he was doing well. She was really happy to get that call and then relayed that message back to him.
Before, I thought I couldn't cope with being in sport and school at the same time. Since I have a mentor, he puts me in how much time should I spend like on sports and how much time should I spend on homework.
So there's a student that I've gotten to know really well last year. He's had a really rocky relationship with school. He will show up to school and say, I give up and I'm done and I'm like, this isn't for me, and then he will leave. This is all I can do. Like, I can't drag you to do anything. That's, you know, the roller coaster ride that you ride as a mentor.
My mentee and I have a fantastic relationship. I see her multiple times every day.
I never really reached out when I was just this kid that was like completely different from everybody else. It was hard for me to go through another day.
She didn't always have like that one person that she can always just go to and say, yep, this person is here and they still care, and no matter what I do, they're gonna be here and we're gonna work through it.
Worked out pretty well because like we've run through the same situations. I love talking to her and seeing her every single day.
When I work with these young men and I see them care for once in their lives and feel like someone is actually there and pushing them to want the success that they deserve, it's powerful for me.
Everything about our school feels better when students feel engaged, and they're engaged when they feel like they're successful, when people care about them, and when they belong. So it has a benefit both for the students and their individual success, as well as for the school and our culture and our overall success in accomplishing our mission.
You don't always see the success come right away, but after a month or 2 months or 3 months, you're checking their grades and you see, oh, they retook a test. Their grade just went up 14%. And then went to go tell my mentee that, you're done with chemistry, now you passed these proficiencies. Her face lit up.
Each one of these kids are so unique. Like, they all have their own special gifts and talents. Some of them are just putting them on hold because of the circumstances and things that they're going through. But I'm seeing that that's maybe part of my job, to help deal with some of those issues and complications in order for them to free up that space where they can be themselves and they can utilize their gifts and talents in order to have some other successes in life.
When I have a mentor now, it's like my goals are like succeeding and they're getting higher every day.
Well, we have one family that their son is on the route to graduate. Well, he's been working extremely hard. He's been pushing himself, and his mom and dad are so ecstatic, and they just cried, and they're like, we can't believe it. Can't believe he made it. He sent me my invitation, and I told him, I said, I'll be right there next to your mom and dad. They'll probably be cheering a lot louder than me, but believe me, I'll be your cheerleader that day too.
So again, a lot of this goes back to establishing that relationship as best we can, establishing it with the students and establishing it with the families. With Check and Connect, it is an evidence-based strategy. It's out of the University of Minnesota. They have found that it works best if that mentor can be with that student for 2 years so that you have some continuity. Some of our kiddos that are having a hard time have a lot of adults in and out of their lives. So if we can have somebody that can be there and be part of their lives for those 2 years, it is very helpful. Now, if they can't be 2 years, at least the school year, however much continuity we can get. So, but it's all about relationship and then helping students feel like they belong in our building and have that important person that they can go to and connect with. The one young lady said multiple times a day. That doesn't always happen. Okay. Usually it's more like a once or twice a week kind of checking in kind of thing. So some ideas for you. Targeted youth engagement. So again, this sense of engagement in school, that school is someplace I want to come, that I enjoy coming. We want to promote those pro-social behaviors such as, not emotional regulation. How about emotional regulation? I'll go back and fix that. Problem solving, self-control, and a stronger self-identification as a learner. There's a program called Positive Action that was tried in Chicago and Hawaii. And again, I have links in the Padlet to those websites. So it's a social emotional curriculum. It's delivered 15 to 20 minute sessions, 4 days a week for K to 6, but 2 days a week for 7th and 8th graders. And then Becoming a Man is another curriculum that offers after school sessions, and they focus on problem solving, self-reflection, and relaxation strategies. Both of these programs obviously cost money. They're curriculum that cost money, but they were 2 that were recommended by Attendance Works. Questions so far? Good. All right, asthma. My youngest daughter had asthma or has asthma, but she's pretty much outgrown it, fortunately. But she did miss some significant school when she'd get a cold, and it would then exacerbate her asthma. They're finding that there's so many students who are missing school because of asthma, partly because kids or parents are concerned about whether or not there's a healthcare professional that is at the school that can help manage that asthma if they need to use their inhalers, if they need to get more support, more medical assistance. And so having the full-time medical staff, having a full-time nurse in each building, doing some asthma education with families. There is a Open Airways, this kind of an education for families. about how to manage asthma and how to help the school work together with the school to manage asthma for students so that they don't feel afraid to send their kids to school. I remember the first time the preschool went on a farm trip and all the allergens, the hay bales, the hay maze, the cows, all of it. Fortunately, our insurance had a call a nurse asthma line. And I'm like, okay, so I've done this, this, and this. Is there anything else I can do to prepare her to go on this field trip? Because we made up our minds our child was not going to miss out on things because of her asthma. But that was a scary field trip. I mean, I went with her and she was 3, but it was kind of a scary field trip. So for a student that has chronic asthma, that sending them to school and being worried about them having an asthma attack can be a big deal. I know Whitmer High School has opened a health clinic on their campus, and that has been very successful in helping to deal with lots of different sicknesses and health problems. It is federally funded through grant work and those kinds of things. Next time we are going to have the attendance officer from Washington Local here to talk to us about some of the things that they're doing. So, but having that school-based clinic, telehealth sessions, sometimes you can partner to do telehealth sessions, online sessions with medical providers, and then sometimes home visits and case management to help make sure that asthma is not interfering with a student coming to school on a regular basis. Another strategy is the targeted home visits. When I was in room 1, they were talking about, trying to get a hold of families. Some families answer, pay attention to the attendance letters that come home. Some families do not. And so this program was done in Connecticut. It's called the Learner Engagement and Attendance Program. So LEAP for short. And it's a home visiting program to help develop those relationships with families. And they said on the first visit, they do not talk necessarily about attendance. The first visit is just to, it's scheduled. It's not a surprise visit. And it's just to start to build a relationship with that family and help to understand what might be getting in the way of a student being successful at school. For Connecticut and the people implementing it, it led to a 15% increase in attendance over the year for the students who participated. Again, everything's got pros and cons. We do need to make sure that this is funded because a lot of these visits are taking place outside of school hours. So we want to make sure we pay to have our teachers trained and then reimbursed for spending that time on those home visits. All right, any questions? Good. All right, so this is a video about the LEAP program. Second. Not that. Too many tabs. That was on Connecticut's website.
The last 2 or 3 years since COVID, we've had a lot of children who've been out of school. Kids are just missing a lot of learning.
No matter what kind of strategies that we put in the classroom, no matter the quality of our educators, if our students are not there in person, connected and engaged, then learning will not occur.
When this COVID relief money was coming into the picture, the state of Connecticut did a really terrific job of sort of being mindful about how best to use that money to serve our population of students.
The LEAP project really was our answer to chronic absenteeism.
I think LEAP was so successful because you had a trusted member of the community knocking on your door saying why we want your kid back in school. Her friends miss her. The teacher was asking about her. Any concerns you have, would you like to come and meet the teacher? Those personal contacts made a big difference in getting our kids back into the classroom.
LEAP stands for Learn, Engage, and Attendance, and that's the focus of the grant and the funding and the program because we want students to learn and engage.
It starts with having conversations with families on how to get their children to school, but then it goes beyond that. I've been on home visits where families were struggling with finding food. They need resources for the baby. Their child is really struggling developmentally, having trouble with health issues.
As a home visitor, I really support the family. I go to their house and listen to them and care about them.
I have to push my daughter. I tell her all the time, you have to be better than me. I was working in the factory. I have carpal tunnel in my both hands. I don't want it for my daughter. I wanted you to have a better job than me. Claudia heard my daughter go to school, and now she goes into college.
Home visiting for many years has had this connotation that it's punitive. LEAP has shown that there is a way to do home visiting that lifts up, applauds for what you're trying to do, but also reminding you that, okay, there might be something that you're falling down on, but how can we support you in getting your student back on track and in schools?
It's about that trusting relationship, because if that relationship is there, if the parent sees the value and the student sees the value and understands the value of what school is, then you see improved attendance. Then they want to come to schools.
The LEAP program led to approximately a 15 percentage point increase in attendance among those students who participate in the program. We're talking about an increase in attendance that is moving these students from chronically absent to an attendance rate that is more similar to other students.
The impact of just a single home visit on a child's attendance over time had an immediate impact of about 4% in 1 month, but 6 and 9 months later, that student's attendance was still improving.
The program actually was effective across a broad base of student attributes, including race and ethnicity, gender, free or reduced price lunch status, and even students with a disability.
With the infusion of a vast amount of money from the COVID relief dollars, it became necessary to have a mechanism to study how well these initiatives were working.
I think all of the evidence and the proof that we've collected shows, yes, absolutely, LEAP could and should be funded beyond these ARPA dollars, beyond the ESSER dollars. I think the data, though, is most powerful when coupled with those anecdotes. So the things you're hearing from on-the-ground home visitors, that's what makes it come alive.
Sometimes it's just one person to make the difference in the life of a child or a parent or a teenager.
And now the next question is going to become, the next question is, where are we going to get this money? I know. But again, how can we take what the pandemic taught us and build on that and use that good information that we get from the good strategies that were implemented during the pandemic? How can we build on that? And we may not be able to do things the same way we always used to. We may have to do some different things, and this could potentially be a different thing. All right, and again, we're only talking about a group of students here. We're not talking about every single student. We're talking about those kiddos that are in tier 2 and then even tier 3. Okay, so supporting students with disabilities, because as somebody mentioned, we get 2 dings on the report card with attendance when it's a student with disabilities and they're chronically absent. And so can we figure out with all of these kids, what is the root cause of the absence? Why don't they come to school? Why don't they want to come to school? Is it bullying? Are they being suspended and expelled? I mean, students with ED, emotional disabilities, tend to get suspended a lot more. Okay, so how can we better meet their needs at school so that they can stay in school? We know it's not going to be an easy behavior thing, because that's why they have an IEP. And so it's like suspending me because I can't see when I need to wear glasses. Like, kind of different way to think about it. Okay. Are there medical needs? Are they engaged? Are they feeling less engaged than they need to be in order to make it worth coming to school? One of the research pieces I saw said that students who were included more regularly and truly included in regular ed classrooms had less problems with chronic absenteeism than students who were in separate facilities or separate classrooms, because they were potentially more engaged. Okay. Do we need an attendance goal on the IEP to bring it to the forefront of everyone's attention? Do we need access to counselors and therapists for those students who are anxious or depressed? Again, pandemic did not help anybody's anxiety. And if you're prone to being anxious, it didn't get better necessarily during the pandemic. Telehealth services, again, if we're not quite feeling well, can we connect with a medical professional? It can be billed a lot of time through Medicaid and insurance. How can we help increase their sense of belonging? And again, this is with all kids. Positive classroom greetings, those home visits, the mentoring. How can we help make school a more fun place to be, a more pleasant place to be for them? If you think about something that you don't do very well, and then if I ask you to do that 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 180 days a year for 13 years, would you want to keep showing up if you didn't feel like you were getting any better at it? And for our kiddos with disabilities, a lot of times that's what's happening. We're asking them to sit still, behave, read, write, spell, do math, day in, day out. And if they don't feel like they're getting any better at it, why would you keep submitting yourself to that kind of frustration? How can we alleviate some of that frustration? Restorative practices to behavior. Again, the research says suspensions and expulsions really do not work to curb misbehavior. For the one kiddo that did one bad thing one time and they're mortified that they got suspended, okay, it might work for them. But again, if you are using the same consequence for any kiddo multiple times for the same behavior, that means it's not working. So how else can we get through to this kiddo? And how can we restore that relationship between the educator and the student when they've had a rough time of it? And then making sure that our students with disabilities receive appropriate accommodations in order to improve their academic success. And we want students to leave with the knowledge. Different students need different things to leave with that knowledge. How can we provide some of those modifications, accommodations for them so that they are still learning what we need them to learn, but in a way that works for them? Okay. If you think about so many people in our community that do not do jobs that have anything to do with sitting at a desk in education, are people who work landscaping, are people who work in the trades, are people who even work in service industry, in food industry. They are not sitting still at a desk for 6 hours a day for multiple days a week, and that can work better for them. So how can we make school a little more bearable for our kiddos who have a hard time? Okay, mental health support and understanding school refusal. I have a friend who has a stepson who, with the pandemic, his anxiety shot through the roof, and he was terrified to go to school because of getting sick, because of dying. And unfortunately, he didn't continue to use the supports that were given to him to help alleviate that anxiety. And so essentially from pandemic 2020 forward, he did not attend school in person on a regular basis because of this anxiety. And that is called school refusal. It is a psychological condition, okay? It is something that hopefully the family can help with getting therapy for that, or some of your support services. Your community agencies that can come in can help with that. The longer they are out of school, the harder it is for them to come back, because it just keeps growing and growing and growing in their mind as this big scary place. Okay, so we want to identify the root cause again. You notice a theme here. Why are they missing school? What are they worried about? What are they concerned about? And then can they get into some kind of therapy with somebody, with an outside agency to help with that? But then relaxation techniques, and then some gradual exposure. Okay, the way to kind of be less anxious about something is to be gradually exposed to it in a safe way, so that they figure out, okay, this is not something to be as anxious about. Okay, this is stepping beyond our scope and sequence as educators. I acknowledge that, but hopefully with some outside therapy help and the cooperation with family in school, we can help to alleviate some of this. Mrs. Wallace, was that a hand raise or was that just waving? Okay. Any questions? Right. Okay, immigration support. This is going to get worse before it gets better, folks. Just it is going to, whatever your viewpoints on immigration are, it's going to get worse before it gets better. All right. My own children are half Mexican, half white. And when a lot of the immigration talk started several years ago, they were asked, are you going to get deported at school by kids? Okay. Because it's all over the news. All right. My children were born in the United States. My husband was born in the United States. No one's getting deported. But that's the kind of talk that is happening. It is also a real fear for a lot of people because if some of the policies go into place that are being talked about, it is a true fear that a van is going to come around and someone's going to be arrested. I know of families that were taken out of work and put in a van and taken away through INS. That does not help kids go to school. Okay, that the law says that we are required to educate children regardless of their immigration status. All right. Well, why don't the parents come in and talk to me? They're afraid. They are afraid that they are going to get caught and then be deported. And so any government agency can be a scary place for families. So we want to make sure that we establish some clear school-based protocols for handling immigration enforcement. All right, we want to make sure we follow Ohio law as far as what's expected. And we want to make sure that families understand as much as possible in their native language, as much as possible, that school is a safe place. Our job as a school is not to report immigration status to anybody. Okay. We want to build those strong relationships with the families, and that LEAP program, they found that that was the most effective with English learners population because they did have a chance to build that relationship with the family, especially if they have somebody who does speak their home language. In general, at school, we want to make sure we have culturally relevant curricula. Okay. Are students seeing themselves in the wall decor? Are they seeing themselves in the literature that is read? Are they seeing themselves in even just worksheets and shows and documentaries or whatever you're showing to them? Okay, we want to make sure that they feel. Terry, I feel like you're looking at something else. Sorry. We want to make sure it's culturally relevant curricula. And then having a staff member assigned as a point of contact for those families so that they have the number and then the interpretation services, if possible, to help them communicate needs and be able to have that open communication between home and school. In certain communities, it was shown if there's an INS van parked anywhere near the school, the kids aren't coming to school. I don't know that that happens quite as much in Toledo as it might happen in some other communities closer to the border, but just something to be aware of. Okay, it is a real fear for families who are here living and working, even if their children are citizens of the United States because they were born here. That doesn't guarantee that the families are immune from deportation. It doesn't at all. Questions? Expanded learning programs. So after school or during school activities, I know at one point, Horizon Science, Springfield, you were doing your clubs at the end of the day on certain days of the week. I don't know if that's still the case. Is that still the case, Allison?
No, unfortunately, because of transportation, we couldn't have a lot of students stay. So we built time into our day for that now.
Good, good. Yeah, and that's what I had remembered, that you built it into the school day to,
Yeah.
again, to
So
help with
we
engagement.
just shaved off a couple minutes of each period and then added an enrichment period.
Awesome, awesome. So and with these programs, we're not necessarily talking about just tutoring or something like that. We're talking about enrichment activities, you know, clubs or activities that kids could be excited about coming to. I'm really interested in building with Legos. I'm really interested in some of the engineering types of things. Whatever it is, to be able to have those experiences either after school, during the school day, or during the summer, and taking into account things like transportation and things like that. The kids need something to look forward to come to school. And so having those built into the day in some way, shape, or form helps with attendance. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, student success plans. Student success plans are a requirement for students, middle school and high school, who are determined to be in danger of graduating. So all the high school students have to have a graduation plan, 9 through 12. Okay, but then students, and the district is in charge of setting that threshold of where, when they reach a certain amount of X, whether it's attendance, behavior, or course grades, where they're going to set that threshold to say, now these students need a success plan. Okay. But anybody who is at risk of graduating needs to have a success plan. And this is something that's been out for a couple of years, several years at least. If you have more questions about success plans, Erin Weisbrod and Lisa Height in our office are resident experts on those. I did put ODE's website about success plans on the Padlet. If you do develop a success plan, families need to be notified. And then what extra instructional or support services are being offered to the student to help meet their needs so that we have a higher chance of them graduating, right? And an attendance plan could be part of that success plan. And next time we will talk more about attendance plans for individual kiddos. And again, Washington Local Schools attendance officer is going to speak for a few minutes about how they've taken the attendance plan that DEW has put out and modified it to meet the needs at Washington Local Schools so that they make sure that the different services are being provided. Questions about success plans? And this is an Ohio law, guys. This one's not optional.
Tammy, I'd like how you have the page number on the slide so that we can go back and refer to that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And yeah, so the guide is Ohio's attendance guide, and then the handbook is the attendance works, or the other one, the blue one. So yeah, so you can find more information from there. Basically, my presentations are taking the information that are in those guides and summarizing them on the screen for you guys so that you kind of get a potpourri of options, and then you can go dig a little deeper. Right. So we have just a few minutes left. Are there any questions? So my thought is we'll take just 5 minutes to go into breakout rooms and kind of touch base with people to see what are you thinking about doing for tier 2 strategies. What strategies do you think will work in your district? Here are the questions. And I'll send you to breakout rooms. It'll just be quick because I do want to give you time to do the evaluation at the end. Give me feedback. Let me know what worked, what didn't work, so I can make the next one even better. Okay.